Trustee Healy?
Here.
Trustee Milani?
Here.
Technology Innovation Performance and Performance Improvement Committee, approval of minutes.
Mr. Chairman,
Trustee Calandrella.
I move to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of the Technology Innovation and Performance Improvement Committee of July 15, 2019.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Microsoft Enterprise Agreement.
David?
Mr. Chairman, I put forth this agenda item, has to do with the village approving, or you recommending for approval, the enterprise agreement with Microsoft. This agreement is, Microsoft has gone to a subscription-based licensing program, and they're encouraging their customers to move off the perpetual licenses, which is when you bought a version of the software and you could stay on that version for as many years as you wanted, and then you'd pay again to upgrade to the newest version. They've gone to a subscription-based licensing, so you have to pay every year, but you do get to stay on the latest version of that software and have access to it and what have you. This agreement is necessary because some of the software licenses that we currently have will no longer be supported in 2020. So we need to buy new software licenses in order to upgrade these software packages. Also, Microsoft has now built obsolescence into their Windows desktop operating system. And so every 18 months, it'll be a requirement for the village to upgrade their operating systems in order for them to be updated from a security standpoint, which is really important and essential. Also, the software contains automation to allow village staff to automate updates to Microsoft products as well as third-party products in order to push updates. Every week, we're constantly getting informed of vulnerabilities in various software packages, and those software companies issue what they call patches, software updates, in order to resolve those vulnerabilities. And so this software will help us automate that, because we do have about 400 workstations village-wide, and with limited staff and resources, it makes it difficult to keep those updated. Finally, this package also includes CJIS compliance, which is the Criminal Justice Information System through the FBI. They allow police confidential data, as well as any confidential government data that we have. We have access to their government cloud or tenancy to store that information there. And this enterprise agreement gives us access to that. So it also contains other software packages which will benefit the city, such as Office product licenses for Excel, Word, etc., our Office, our Exchange email system licensing, or as I mentioned, our desktop and server operating systems. It will give us access to the Azure Microsoft Cloud, as well as to other Microsoft products such as SharePoint and Teams.
Okay. Question for you then. Will this give us access to the on-premise versions and the cloud versions of the software? So as we look forward to be able to migrate to a cloud, so we can become more efficient and lower our costing models?
Correct. There's some updating we need to do before we're able to move to the cloud for our email system. And these licenses will allow us to run our Microsoft Exchange environment on-premise until we've resolved those issues and can move that system to the cloud.
Okay.
I have a question. Was there, was this budgeted, was this in the budget already, or is this something new? It's going to be that.
This was not in the fiscal 2019 budget, so it is a unbudgeted new item.
Okay.
So I guess my question to follow up on that, are we taking money away from another project in order to do this, or is there a surplus where we can actually spend this money without hurting other projects?
Yes, we've reviewed the budget and identified some items that we can, that we're no longer funding or pursuing, and we will take those funds to offset the cost of this enterprise agreement for 2019. And those projects involve case management in police, centralized cashiering, which we resolved cannot be done with our current ERP system and Tyler Energov, so we decided that that will no longer be used, as well as e-citation. And there was money budgeted for an exchange software upgrade, and this will be rolled into the EA. So we identified close to $200,000 in funding that we'll be able to use to fund this agreement.
So making this purchase, then, it'll kind of position us better here and kind of build more of a solid infrastructure to move forward on then?
That is the focus, is we've got to start with a foundation, and you need a real solid foundation in order to build upon it, as with anything, especially with IT. So I've been focused on security and building a secure, stable foundation with our operating systems, able to keep them updated with our email system. Automating things where we can automate them will allow us to do that.
Okay. Any other questions? Kind of a point of order or question for the clerk. Since this is on our agenda here tonight, we're going to be making a motion here. It's also going to the board floor then tonight as well, and that will be for a vote as well.
Yep.
That would be how
Correct.
this would go? Okay. I'm still the new guy here, so.
Number 9 on the agenda.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion.
Sure. Mr. Chairman, I move to recommend to the board to approve procurement of a 3-year Microsoft Enterprise Agreement from CDW-G with an annual payments of $185,958 for a period of 3 years, plus a 5% contingency fee for each of the 3 years.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
Development Services, approval of minutes.
Mr. Chairman,
Trustee Calandrella.
I move to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of the Development Services Planning Engineering Committee of July 15, 2019.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Old Mill Landscape Improvements.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Malani.
I move to, wait, hold up. We need to discuss it first.
Mr. Chairman,
Did you?
Yes, Mike.
the village has several outstanding letter of credits that need to be released and closed throughout the village limits. The project located at Old Mill Subdivision is one of those projects. The complexity and size of these sites needs to have some professional consultation to itemize outstanding items in regards to landscaping, et cetera. Currently, the site has several landscape issues such as, but not limited to, tree planting and naturalized landscaping. Landscape consultant Hayden Associates has provided a bid fee of $5,400 to provide a punch list that can be used for an RFP process of selecting a landscape contractor. The payment will be processed from account number 010-000-150000. The village will be reimbursed when a check is issued to the village to cover the landscape work. This will assist and facilitate a necessary bid item and help bring another site to a close. So this check will be completely reimbursed by the developer. Developer had an unfortunate circumstance where his father, who was involved in the project from the start, unfortunately passed away. The son has taken over, so he just needs some assistance. Professionally, he has agreed to reimburse the village for our consultant to provide that punch list for him so he could get a landscape contractor to bid it and to go ahead and close the project out and get the site up to design standards.
Okay. I've got a couple questions. Will the village receive a fee for administering this contract?
I don't think do we normally institute a fee for something like that? I don't think we do. No.
So that's
No.
not customary or anything like
No.
that? Okay, okay, then, once this is complete, his development is completed, and
As a master developer, that is correct.
and then the remainder of his letter of credit will be released.
That is correct.
Okay, I have no further questions, Steve.
Okay. Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Milani?
I move to recommend to the village board to approve the proposal from Hay and Associates Incorporated for $5,400 to complete a set of bid plan and bid specifications for the RFP process to complete the landscaping on site at Old Mill subdivision.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Amendment to Village Code Title 7, Chapter 6, amusement devices.
Mr. Coleman?
Excuse me, which one is this one?
Amusement devices?
Okay. This particular amendment is focused on a new type of amusement being offered in Orland Park. A new business applied within the village for a business license and a building permit for a virtual reality gaming application. Staff considered on a proactive stance to check with the village legal team for a ruling whether this is considered an amusement device. Their interpretation is that this does follow the rules as an amusement device and shall be enforced henceforth as such. New software will also allow online renewal, so the application renewal process will be streamlined to a user-friendly application. This is a new ongoing application that we have, I think now 2 more facilities want to bring in as virtual reality, and it's like an amusement device. So we're treating it with the equipment, everything, that this is something that we're going to go ahead and investigate, and we're going to go ahead and do inspections on and so forth, and have licensing for.
Okay. Will they be inspecting each headset? Or licensing each headset? Is that how that'll work? or-
Each gaming application is what they will go ahead and actually inspect and license.
Okay. And will existing businesses actually be grandfathered in? Like I said, we have one already that's running. or-
Well, the one that's Fusion VR is the one that applies, and then we have 2 additional that are questioned whether or not they can bring this in. So we're looking at the zoning application of it, that if they're okay within the zoning ordinance to go in. So we figured, well, this is something that's going to be popping up, let's be proactive about it and see if this is something we should maybe do gaming. But we only have one right now, Fusion VR, and this will be the initial one.
So they will have to be licensed?
Yes.
then? Okay. Because I know, reading the brief, it was, at first, there was no licensing, so they're okay with being licensed? Okay.
Yes.
Just checking.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Colangelo?
It seemed like also there's going to be a little more efficiency instead of having to get a decal for each gaming device. It's just one for the whole store, is that correct? Or whole business?
Yes.
So will that type of licensing move forward to like all devices in the future, or just the VR?
Well, we're looking to go ahead and do all of them like that on online fee also, because we have a lot of them that, like Dave & Buster's, there's so many machines in there, so we're looking to go ahead and just do it in a situation where all of them be inspected, and once they're approved, they'll get a certificate.
Okay. Great.
Mr. Chairman?
Trustee Calandrella?
I move to recommend to the village board approval revision of Title 7, Chapter 6 of the Amusement Device Code.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Bluff Point subdivision.
Mr. Chairman, the petitioner proposes to revise the 2017 approved and partially constructed Bluff Point subdivision by removing 18 of the single-family lots from the approved 49-lot subdivision and replacing them with 9 lots with 9 townhome buildings for a total of 38 townhome units. The zoning on this project is LSPD, Large Scale Planned Development District. The 49-lot single-family subdivision is located on a 26-acre lot. At the present moment, they have 3 model homes that have been constructed, inspected, and CFOs issued. They have 2 lots that have closed to private sellers or to another developer, and 3 additional homes are currently under construction by another developer on Monarch Drive. There is going to be no change to the recently constructed street network, detention pond, or floodplain. So basically, the roads are staying the same. Detention ponds have been constructed, so it meets the criteria of our exterior facades. We are going through the plan review process right now, and we're in our second review. So once that review is complete, they will meet the criteria of our Title V, Chapter 1 building code.
I've got a couple questions.
Sure.
This is, so we've got someone who went in and got it approved for single-family lots. And now it's almost like a second bite of the apple. They want to have multifamily approved to go in there.
Well, if I could clarify that, Trustee Healy, this is still considered a single family. Multifamily would be considered a 3-dwelling unit in a building separate with a common entry. This is considered attached single family, not detached, but it's still a single family development.
Okay, well, that's correct. I'm mad at myself. I should use better language or whatever for that. That's, from single family, they went to these townhouses, for lack of a better thing. So that improves, that's more density for the village. There's got to be water problems with that. And I understand the planning committee approved this 7-1?
6-1.
6-1?
Yes.
Okay. We have a comprehensive land use policy. Why aren't we sticking to it?
This particular project had an agreement in previous years ago that allowed these townhouses in the project. So we are maintaining the integrity of that agreement. It meets the parking requirement, which a parking requirement in this application will be 2 parking spaces plus an additional half a parking space if it's more than 2-bedroom. We have 4 parking spaces that are considered to be private off-site, 2 enclosed and attached garage and 2 on the driveway. It meets the criteria of that particular development. Staff has reviewed it comprehensively in detail and presented it accordingly to the Plan Commission. The developers worked closely with our team to maintain as close integrity of that agreement as possible. So it does meet the criteria of that large-scale plan development.
For parking and that, but.
Yes.
But this is, I guess my concern is having every residential development that goes a little bit south would come back here and ask to be giving permission to have townhomes instead.
Well, the townhomes are specifically...
I mean, just to go into a more to revise their plans to have more density, let me put it that way.
Right, a lot of developments have a specific zoning that's attached to them. Say R3 or R2A, they are specifically for detached single-family residences. They're not intended for townhouses. Townhouses are specific to a type of zone, LSPD being one of them, R4 being another one. So I think when we have a developer that would come in and say, listen, they're not selling or marketing as well as we thought, we want to go to a townhouse development, it would actually trigger a whole nother process, including a rezone, because the particular zoning that was agreed upon is specific to detached single family. So going to attached single family would be almost like a different design.
So this is, it's my understanding, this is the result of a lawsuit a couple from years ago that where it was a settlement between the village and Gallagher and Henry to have certain
Criteria set, yes.
right, certain criteria set, and we're in compliance with that.
Yes.
And the developer is in compliance with that.
Yes.
Any other questions for anybody?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
just a point of clarification. This development isn't going south. I think one of the major reasons that they're adding this element to it is really to meet market demands. As you look at the population and the demographics in Orland Park, there seems to be a tremendous need for this type of product. And I think what the developer has done is kind of read the demographics, has listened to their customers, and are starting to react by providing product that might be better accepted by our aging population.
Well, thank you. My concern was more for the long term about giving someone preference or whatever, but that's not the case. He's entitled to this, and you should be allowed to do it, so, my opinion.
The design of the elevations are quite attractive. They do meet the criteria of our, design standards, both in Land Development Code and in the Building Code Title V, Chapter 1. So it's a product that could be easily converted to accessible standards, and, it's good. Like Village Manager Doolby said, for the aging population, it's good.
I have a couple questions. One, it looks like the the rear of the building's facing Wolf Road. It looks like there will be a tree break there, so they won't be looking at traffic as they live there, which is nice. But that outlot behind it, is that always between the buildings? You know, the rear of them are facing east, and then there's the tree line, and then there's an outlot there. Is that going to remain an undeveloped outlot? Like along Wolf Road?
He's talking about the
It looks like it might.
floodplain.
Yeah, it might be
Okay.
part of the floodplain, so it's undeveloped land.
Okay, so that'll remain on both?
Yes.
Okay.
The way the contours of the survey indicate, it's sloping actually downward, so it's also going to be,
Yeah.
designed that way specifically to keep the floodplain in check.
This will, in my opinion, I think adding the additional, units in there is actually a good thing. I mean, because we're bringing more residents here, and, we would like to do that. And I think it's going to be a nice addition to that area, so.
Yeah, the buildings, the way they're designed, is 7 buildings of 4 attached single families and 2 buildings of 5 attached. So they're not looking like they're a very long urban context type of design building. They're more of a suburban style where they do have shorter style buildings with smaller amount of units, allowing more landscape and a more of a break in between the units.
Any other questions or comments?
Nope, it looks like a great development, so.
Yeah, I just have one harsh comment or whatever. I understand in the planning committee that it came out that the grass had not been maintained, and the neighbors are not happy about it. And I just don't understand developers should want to make those people happy, maybe not ecstatic, but at least happy or satisfied. I want, just my own personal thing, I think we're presumably going to allow this, but it's, we just want, it'd be nice to get assurances, we're not going to get them tonight, but that the grass is maintained, and maybe I'd ask the enforcement of that to be strictly adhered to in respect to the residents next door.
Yes, we could have code enforcement actually investigate the site periodically to make sure that the grass is being cut. The same rules would apply to if the grass exceeds or shrubbery exceeds 8 inches. It will have to be trimmed by the developer and cut. So we'll be diligent on that for you.
All right, thank you. If there's no other questions, can I have a motion?
Oh, it's a long one.
You get to cut most of it out.
Yep. Just the first section. Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Malani.
I move to recommend to the Village Board of Trustees approval of a site plan elevation subdivision with plat, preliminary landscape plan, and special use permit with modifications for Bluff Point subdivision revised, located at 16900 to 17100 Wolf Road, as recommended at the July 16th, 2019 Plan Commission meeting, and as fully referenced below.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All against? Right.
Amending Title 7, Chapter 18 in regard to video gaming.
Mr. Chairman. This would represent an update to the existing video gaming ordinance. That ordinance allowed for 30% of Class A liquor license holders to apply for video gaming licenses. That equates to 21 under the current liquor licenses, of which 17 are active, 4 are in the process, and there are 7 on the waiting list for additional licenses. In the 1 year since this ordinance has been in effect, the police department reports there have been no significant issues indicating the ability to expand this operation. The amendment before you tonight would administer gaming licenses akin to the liquor licenses, and that the board could increase or decrease the number of licenses on an individual basis. However, it would give priority first for the first 90 days to the 7 that are on the waiting list, in deference to the fact that they have been waiting and should receive some priority as a result of being on that wait. The ordinance sets parameters such as 300 feet between establishments and 100 feet from residential districts. The 100 feet is a reflection of the state statute. The 300 feet represents the greatest distance between 2 existing license holders, so there'd be no nonconformities created by the new ordinance. Where that particularly comes in is, for example, at the mall, the 300-foot separation would limit the mall to no more than 3 licenses, so that we didn't have a de facto center for gaming established there. Each new license, on average, based on the existing analysis, would represent somewhere between $8,400 and $10,000 a year in annual village revenue.
Greg, you said that in the next 90 days that these 7 other applicants can come forward. Or what's the 90-day?
The first, at the end of the 90 days, the 7 that are on the waiting list could be considered in lump sum, all at once by the village board, and after that, it would go to an individual case-by-case consideration as people applied.
Any other questions?
Just one, Mr. Chairman, just how many, we have 62, how many liquor licenses do we have right now? Mid-60s?
It would be, well, 30% would be 21 establishments, so there'd be just around 70.
Yeah.
Okay. So they would all be eligible, assuming that they get through
Assuming
the
they could meet
process?
the 300-foot separation, which they could not all do.
Do you know how many could fit? And then in this, so they could not all do, so you probably know.
It's a challenging analysis because it depends on who comes in first. If there's somebody in the center of the 300, it can knock out 2, whereas just say the one to the north would come out, it would only knock out 1.
Got it.
So there's no simple way to answer that question.
Thank you.
I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Calandrella?
I move to recommend the village board to pass ordinance entitled an ordinance amending Title 7, Chapter 18 of the Orland Park Village Code in regard to video gaming.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, I'm asking for a recorded vote.
Okay. Recorded vote?
Or just nay. Just-
Nay. Oh, I'm sorry, Dan. Okay. All nays? You've got a nay, so it's 2-1.
Finance Committee, approval of minutes.
Mr. Chairman,
Trustee Healy?
I move to approve the minutes
July 15th.
of July 15th, 2019. July 15th, 2019, Finance Committee minutes.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Sorry, Bill.
That's okay.
Low-speed electric bicycles.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It was brought to our attention by a resident who happens to also be an attorney that a strict reading of the current codes in place could lead one to believe that electric bicycles need to be licensed akin to a vehicle license. And that's because we do include motorcycles and other non-muscular powered bicycles, including electric bicycles in that definition by the strictest definition. The state exempts low-speed electric bicycles from any kind of state registration. This appears to be a case where the state law has been updated more recently than the village code. And a concern here is it'd be impractical to locate or track these electric bicycles. There are currently none of them registered in the village. And the costs to do so would exceed the revenues, given that we could expect between, say, 0 or 1 or 2 licenses to come forward. So this code amendment would add a single a line to the code, add an exemption for low-speed electric bicycles as defined by the state statute.
Did we find this out through administrative hearing? Someone challenged us, or?
No, we found this out by somebody who had purchased a low-speed electric bicycle for their son. And because he's an attorney, he took a particular interest in it and looked through our codes and contacted the manager's office.
Those attorneys. Any questions from the board?
No.
From the audience? With that, looking for a motion?
Mr. Chairman,
Trustee Maloney.
I move to recommend to the village board approval of an ordinance entitled an ordinance amending Title 9, Chapter 1, vehicle licenses of the Village Code of Orland Park, Cook County, Illinois.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Extension of lines of credit.
Anywhere do you want to tee this up?
So let me just, I got sidetracked a minute.
We're seeing if you have to register your bike.
Yeah, no, I already got yelled at by the guy, so I'm glad we're changing the code. So Mr. Chairman, back in 2015, we had established 2 different lines of credit to fund some substantial capital improvements that we were doing, both related to roads as well as stormwater projects. We renewed that line of credit in 2017, and we also ended up utilizing some of that line of credit authority to fund the nature center improvements. So the lines of credit are once again up for renewal. They actually expired last Monday. So we're coming to the board to renew them for a period of 4 months. We'll renew what's currently outstanding on them as well as the remaining undrawn amount through December. And the reason I did it for short term is I feel that as we go through this year's budget process, as we go through the 2020 budget process, that we'll be able to identify any additional funding needs that we may need through the lines of credit, and then we can do it all at once with BMO Harris Bank. So this tonight is just to renew the lines of credit for a period of 4 months.
Any questions from the board?
No questions.
Questions from, Trustee Healy?
Go ahead. Mr. Chairman,
Trustee Healy?
I move to recommend to the village board to approve the second amendment to the credit agreement and the second amendment to the revolving credit agreement.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Discussion of forensic audit?
So I guess I'll start, and then Anne Marie can fill in some details.
Okay.
So I sat down with Anne Marie, and there was some discussion on the board floor regarding a lot of different things with the bidding process. And this item's up for discussion. I wanted to get the input of my fellow board members before we send staff to do an RFP, RFQ, or whatever we decide. This is not looking backwards. It's not my intent to look backwards into anything that has been investigated. I talked to Tom about this, and I think he does support the idea of this concept. So, and I guess my charge would be to have an audit review for the compliance with the existing process and also the evaluation of the process and maybe the ability to improve it. This is not a negative towards staff or towards our village team at all. I think it's just based on everything that's been going on. I think that our taxpayers want to make sure that our process is clean, fair, and transparent. Again, it's nothing negative regarding our village team. I think it's just that something that we could assure that, for me, what we're voting on is, and it's legal, but more importantly, it happens, the check's getting out correctly. It's not any issues with that. So I guess my 3 tasks would be, is our bidding process compliant with all the relevant laws? What happens here, it gets to the checkbook correctly and gets to the vendor's hands and properly, and what standards and how we review contracts. I learned something as I'm somewhat new in the finance chair, that we have $1 million contracts without attorneys reviewing them. Maybe that's just an attorney saying attorneys should do more work, but I feel like something giving $1 million or plus, that's a number I'm developing in my head, should be reviewed by an attorney. And again, this is not a judgment on a village team, but and I hope at the end of the day, there might be some recommendation to make us a better village financially, but it also may say the finance department is doing a wonderful job, the village team is doing a wonderful job, keep going, you're rock stars. So again, this is not against any of our village team members. It's more of just to make sure, verify the process, those 3 things I just discussed, and just making sure the public and myself, and I think us as trustees want to make sure that our bidding process are correct. So I guess the 2 consensus I'm looking for today is what the scope we would want, and the second of, Anne Marie's going to tee up that she talked to one of our advisors right now about possibly coming in who knows us. Do we want to go with those individuals, or do we want to have someone else go out to official RFPQS, whatever the proper bidding is? So with that, I'm going to open up. Or Anne Marie, want to talk about the investigation with having someone that's been doing our advising audits before?
Yeah, so when Trustee Colangelo brought it to my attention, I had and we wanted to go out there and find out kind of what a fee would be. I just reached out to our current financial statement auditor. As part of the annual audit process, they do a lot of internal control documentation and testing. And through that documentation and testing, they'd kind of have a leg up on somebody that wasn't familiar with the village at all. I did reach out to them for a fee. A forensic audit, in the true definition, is not maybe exactly what we're looking for, but that was kind of the term that was thrown out there. So I did reach out for a fee. You can see in the agenda item that the fee varies greatly. An audit is usually based upon a sample of testing, so that would be about $15,000. But if we actually wanted to look at all of these items over the last number of years, that sample would be a lot larger and the fee would be more.
Okay.
And you also open up discussion, whoever
Oh,
wants to jump in.
yes. Oh, gosh, yes, I have questions.
Sure, go ahead.
So as I was reading the legislation text, the first line, the village board has requested that staff retain the services of an audit firm to conduct a forensic audit. Which board was this? Because I don't remember us ever agreeing to a forensic audit of any kind.
So maybe I just wrote it a little bit incorrectly, but there have been board members that have asked us to investigate the opportunity to have one of these audits done. But nothing was formally approved
Okay.
by the board.
Okay. Question for Tom then. Did those people come directly to you to ask for this, or did they go to Anne Marie first?
I've had direct discussion with Trustee Dodge, where he's brought up many different issues in terms of the process, one of which we've discussed was a forensic audit.
And
Or one
so-
that was brought up, we did not discuss it, but was brought up as something the village might want to consider.
Okay. To go back to my question, did he ask you first?
Yes.
Thank you. Second of all, do we understand what a forensic audit is, Mr. Chairman, and what it entails and what you're actually asking for?
Well, that's why we're having a discussion, is to figure out what these three board members would want, and if you want it all, and, and that's up to your decision. I just feel like we need to make sure that the process is, and again, this is nothing to rehash anything in the past. It's about the future looking forward, that's all.
I understand that, but do you understand what a forensic audit is, what it entails, and what you are asking for?
I believe I do, yes.
Can you explain it for me then?
I actually think it'd be more appropriate for our finance director to talk about that, because she's the pro, and I will do probably an adequate job, as Anne Marie is the expert. And we also have a CPA on the board who probably would.
Yeah, I was going to ask Trustee Healy, because I think he's actually been involved in some before, haven't you?
Before they were called forensic audits, everybody did those, so now it's a specialty.
So I guess Trustee Malai is asking what the definition of a forensic audit is.
I was asking if you knew what a forensic audit was.
I do, and however, I'm going to defer for the details of Anne Marie, because I think that's the appropriate person to answer all the details. Do you want her to answer that question or no?
Yes, please. So, that's noted.
So I'm not going to be able to give you what the true definition of a forensic audit, but my opinion of it, as well as when I was talking to the auditors the other day, it's really an audit where you're looking at transactions to find fraud. It's very, like I said, transactional in nature. It's more monetary related as opposed to process related. The forensic audit term was what was, I believe, brought to the village manager's attention as well as mine, and that's the term that was used. In my opinion, as the finance director and maybe a CPA and someone who's done audits, it's more of an internal control review that we're looking at. So we're looking at, do we have the controls in place to make sure that we're following state statute? Do we have the controls in place to make sure that we're awarding bids and RFPs to the appropriate vendors? And do we have the controls in place to make sure that we're getting the proper approvals before we allow them to do the work and get paid for the work?
Mm-hmm. So, Trustee Healy, do you agree with that definition then of what a forensic audit is?
Sure. I mean, sticking with the term forensic audit, in non-specific terms, it means it's something that's generally going to go to court, that you're calling a forensic accountant for. There's a certain level of documentation that the court has, and that's called forensic accounting. That's why these guys it's a specialty now. There's certain generally accepted rules that they have to file. They're starting to codify how they're supposed to do things. It is a specialty. The forensic auditors are paid a lot more because they take on more risks and more things. It's going before a court, so it's got to be documented to the nth degree and going along with that stuff. I think with Anne Marie, a better word would be a system audit or a system review or a compliance audit. The term forensic has a lot of bad connotations.
Negative connotations, yes.
Yeah, so I guess my question then would be, so an audit is usually around financials, correct? It's usually around numbers, accounting, principles, correct?
Right, and Trustee Healy kind of just touched on it. There's also like compliance type audits, right? So a compliance type audit is going to make sure that you're adhering to the rules that are in place, the policies and procedures that are in place.
Right, so policies and procedures, and when we start thinking more along the lines, if there's a problem with our RFP and bidding process, wouldn't we do more of like a process mapping exercise or a process analysis to see if there's an issue? I mean, if we feel that there's a problem with our RFP and bidding process, wouldn't this be more along the lines of, hey, let's do a Six Sigma process and improve something, versus let's spend tons of money to dig into our financials and find out if there may have been fraud?
Or more importantly, make sure there isn't any issues in the future. I think Trustee Healy talked about an internal review, control review. I think maybe the forensic audit, the wordage, I think people are getting caught up on. This is not for anything, there's no litigation. This is not trying to talk about the past. It's more reviewing a small section of the past to see if any issues were caught, and also with the future to make sure there's no internal controls that we should have. So if it was a worded issue of what a forensic audit is, it wasn't meant for that. It's more of an internal control review.
Okay. So you bring up another question for me then. So what exactly are the parameters that you're looking to audit? I mean, you say a time period in the past. What's the time period?
This is exactly why we're having this discussion.
You just suggested that there is a time period in the past, so you must have something in mind.
Actually, I don't.
Then why are we discussing this?
I mean, in time period, I think you have to have a good basis of control. So is it 2 years, a year, 5 years? I don't know. I think that's what we should have, those discussions. There's nothing, again,
Right.
it sounds like you're a little defensive, and I understand that.
No,
but at the end of the day, I'm just making sure that the public can know that the process is clean, and that our contracts are clean, and that we're going through the process properly. This should be a no-brainer. I'm not sure why you're pushing back so much.
Because I feel that just digging into the past does nothing. It does absolutely nothing. Wow, we dug in the past and we found out that maybe once the process wasn't adhered to. Why don't we look at what the process is and find out there's issues with the process versus going back and saying, oh, look, somebody made a mistake in the past or something was done incorrectly in the past. How about we actually figure out what the process is, follow it, do it correctly in the future, and then we never have to have this discussion again. Doesn't that make sense, and isn't that the right way to move forward?
I think that you need at least a little data set. So how are you going to just go from today on we review it? Or the problem is we need to see some data and see some bidding process moving forward. If you don't want, if you want to say we don't need any history, if that's what Anne Marie and the consultants say, we don't need to look at the past, that's fine. And again, I think it's just the issue with possibly adding additional past time is just to have some data, a data set. Without a data set, we're just kind of saying this is what we do. We don't have any testing information. That's all it is.
I mean, 2 years, 5 years, 10, 25, how far do you want to go back?
Whatever our consultants is. We're not, the only one that's an expert here in accounting is Anne Marie and maybe Mr. Trustee Healy.
Maybe I will let Bill talk for a little bit.
If I can interrupt for a second?
Absolutely.
The wording of the text that we're supposed to discuss goes to proposals, policies, and procedures, as well as a review of the selection process for all, not for some, but all bids in RFP issued over the last 5 to 7 years. So first of all bids would be a lot of work, and 5 to 7 years, it just rings of, what we've already gone through, and nobody wants to go back there again.
And I don't.
That's just, it's out there. This is what the proposal was stated was, and that's why we just don't understand, it's hard to fathom.
I think Anne Marie has something she wants to ask.
So I don't mean
Go
to
ahead.
interrupt. So this was written in a manner, in the way I understood, that we were looking to get something like this done. My recommendation, and obviously it's up to the board in the end, I think our contracts are clean. I think we do things the right way. I think we follow the law. There are various times where we issue an RFP and you have more leeway in selecting your vendor. What I would recommend if we want to do something like this is that we look at our current procedures and policies, as well as some of the improvements to that process that we've made over the last 3, 4, or 5 years, and then get recommendations for improvement if there are areas where we are maybe slipping on, whatever, that in adherence to state statute, or maybe we can do a better job with checklists or something like that. I don't know that we would find anything by going back 5 to 7 years, because I truly believe that we are doing things the right way.
Yeah, I mean, and I think the initial estimate is $15,000 to $50,000.
Well, that depends on the sample size.
Exactly. So if the sample size gets bigger, if we want to dig deeper into the past, let's spend let's spend $200,000 of the taxpayers' money to find out maybe if something went wrong. So to me, I don't know if it has to do with the current investigation that was going on, what happened since Keith is in office, or since we've been in office, whatever it is. I don't know what we're trying to find, but to me, I feel it's a time, money, and resource waste. And to be quite honest, I feel like it's another orchestrated witch hunt, similar to the investigation. Do we really want to dive deeper into the past? I'm all for looking at process, but to go back and look at our financial statements to see if we've done something wrong, there's nothing we can do about the past. We can only fix what's moving forward. So if we focus on process and we focus on improving those processes, that is what we need to spend our time and energy and resources on, because we can all be better. We can all do things better. But to waste money on to see what happened in the past, if somebody might have done something wrong, is a waste. So
I don't think it was an intent. It was more of just to get a data set, and that's the end. So I understand the sensitivity, and this is all in good governance. We're trying to do our best to make sure that people can trust the process. So, if you're reading into it more than it is, it's a discussion. It's not a formal vote. I thought it was good to have this conversation. I'm all about conversation in the public. We talked about this, so I guess I just want to make sure we have a couple more agenda items. So I guess we're talking about possibly looking forward with our processing, scrap any, it sounds like what would you approve, I guess? What would you like?
Well, I wouldn't approve this, I don't think, because, to be quite honest, for Anne Marie to write what she thinks is expected of her, someone had to tell her what was expected of her, and that's what I see on the paper when I read it. So what I see is we wanted to do a forensic audit, we wanted to do it of our bid and request for proposal process for the last 5 to 7 years, and we wanted to spend anywhere from $15,000 to $50,000. Those are the facts that are written on this page someone asked for.
Okay.
I will not go forward on this at all.
So this was a jumping off point that Anne Marie and I had a conversation. I'm sorry, Keith, we have 10 more minutes. Oh,
I understand, but I could jump up there and take part, but I was
Oh,
just going to ask you if I could make a statement.
sure, I have to finish my thought.
Sure.
I'll recognize the mayor. So this was a conversation that Anne Marie had. This is a discussion item. I brought this up so we could all talk about it instead of throwing something on the agenda. So I just wanted to have this discussion, and the only reason why the years were put out there was to collect some data so we figure out the past to make the better future. That's why. Maybe the wording could have been better, forensic auditing. I'll take responsibility of that and review the item better. I asked for this item to be on the 15 to 50,000. Was just getting a ballpark figure just so we could have a discussion what this could cost, and that was it. So with that, I recognize Mayor Peacock.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, as with all the committee meetings, I can take part, but I figured rather than sitting up here through the whole thing, I just happen to have been sitting back here today and listening to everything and listening to this discussion, and if I could make a recommendation regarding this.
Sure.
I think that Director Mampy made a good suggestion. I think it's a forward-looking suggestion, which is let's look at our processes as they exist today.
Yes.
And see if we think there are gaps in that process. And that goes to your process mapping point and to your forward-looking point. Let's look at that. That doesn't cost us anything. It doesn't cost us we don't have to go out to a consultant or anything like that. And that's something that we do on a regular basis with all of our departments, which is we do a process map and see if there's areas for improvement. And I think we can do that and map that out. And then from there, we can make a decision about what we do going forward. That would be my suggestion. So take it or leave it. So, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And I will apologize for getting maybe a little hot under the collar and heated about this, but to be quite honest, I'm just tired of hearing about the past and want to look forward.
And that's why I made that 2-minute preamble talking about this is forward-looking. So I don't have any criteria. I'm just trying to make the best government we have. So, Trustee Healy?
Would just like to, my final comment is the financial statements have been audited and they're fit, people can rely on them. There's good numbers and all that, and we've got capable people, capable auditors. There's no problem with those. I think just looking at I agree with what's been said. A current thing, looking for compliance and mapping out the system would be great, and getting input from all corners.
So it looks like the consensus is next committee have a mapping out of the bidding process and the safeguards, sounds like, for
We might
discussion.
not, yeah, we'll try to get it by next committee.
Okay.
We'll start working on it. And we'll also I can bring in, I think the board had gotten this a couple months ago, but when we do the audit, we get our management letter. It's not called that anymore. It's called a SAS 114 letter. But when we get our management letter, if there was any material weaknesses in any of these processes or controls, it would be in that letter. And if they were significantly material, it would affect our audit opinion. And we always get a clean audit opinion. So.
I think let's just do what we just talked about, hopefully for next committee. And
Okay.
I still think it's not a bad idea for spend a little money to have an outside look. I mean, we spent money on publicity, to make some of us look good. Let's just make sure our backbone's good. So like I said, it's not anything against the team. It's just, I think it's something we need to have a thorough discussion. So, and I apologize for anyone who misread or read into what wasn't supposed to be read into. This is more of a discussion. Instead of this putting a bid out there, I thought we'd have a discussion, and now we have a better plan, at least a plan that the full board, at least my co-board will support. So with that, looking like we have one more item, John?
Yeah, an ordinance providing for the issuance of general obligation refunding bonds, Series 2019.
Go ahead, Mary.
Okay, Trustee Calendar, so this is some good news. So periodically, we're notified by Spear Financial or somebody that has notified them of an opportunity to refund some of our outstanding debt. And it's just like refinancing your mortgage. You refinance your mortgage to get a lower overall interest rate. And so that's why we go out to the bond market. So recently, we were approached by Raymond James to privately place the bonds as opposed to going through a competitive sale. You can kind of read through the ordinance and what it authorizes. It actually kind of sets the parameters as opposed to the exact sales price. We'll know that soon. The market's a little bit volatile, so it might slightly change. But right now, we're looking for refunding about $1.9 million of the outstanding bonds for the 2010 series, which was refunding the 2002, which was used to build a library. So right now, our estimated savings is just over $60,000. Doesn't sound like a lot, but there's only 3 years left on the term of the bond, so that's over the 2% that we usually look for. Kevin McCanna from Spear Financial is here tonight. If you guys have any additional questions, he'd be more than happy to answer them.
Any questions? I think this is going straight to the board tonight, so we have more questions, but another saving money on a line of credit, or saving money retiring the debt. So any questions from the board? Nope. From the audience? Thank you for coming. With that, looking for a motion.
Mr. Chairman,
Trustee Malani?
I move to, do we need an ordinance number yet?
No.
No, not yet. Okay. I move to recommend to the village board to pass ordinance blank entitled, an ordinance providing for the issuance of not to exceed $2 million $950,000 general obligation refunding bonds, Series 2019, of the Village of Orland Park, Cook and Will Counties, Illinois, for the purchase of refunding certain outstanding bonds of said village, providing for the levy and collection of a direct annual tax for the payment of the principal of and interest on said bonds, authorizing the sale of said bonds to the purchaser thereof, and authorizing the execution of a bond order and an escrow letter agreement in connection therewith.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion to adjourn. What's seconding?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.